Glad that you're able to join us. You're going to see that there's a recording in progress permission that's going to show up on your screen. If you could go ahead and hit got that, just so that you know that you're being recorded, and then that way we can use this as a resource in the future. Welcome to the 2024 Ready by 5 RFP, or Request for Proposal pre-conference. We're delighted that you're here to learn more about the process and encourage you to share this information with other staff members at your organization. The Ready by 5 millage is the result of Kent County's successful ballot initiative in 2018, and that secured dedicated and sustained public funding for programs that improve health, school readiness, and well-being of children under age 5 across the community. Since that time, we have distributed $16 million toward critical programming and services that are proven to make a difference in the lives of young children throughout Kent County. Today's pre-conference marks our 6th cycle of funding distribution. Joining me today is the Ready by 5 team, who will help explain and guide you through the funding opportunities and your submission process. The Ready by 5 team consists of, and looking at the images on your screen, from left to right, beginning with the top row, Kyle Johnson, Funding Administrator; Heather Boswell, Vice President; Catherine Cortez, Financial Accountant; Evan Heil, Data and Outcomes Coordinator; Christine Timble Larson, Senior Fund Administrator; Megan Strang, Communications Director; and Jill Salisbury, Fund Development and Project Manager. Thank you again for joining us today. And now I'd like to introduce Christine Timble Larson, who will review the purpose, guidelines, and requirements for this process.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hello, everybody. It's so nice to see so many of you this morning. So we're gathered here today for the pre-conference. Today, we're going to go over the requirements of agencies who receive funding for Ready by 5, the 2024 funding RFP, the system that we use for the online application process, EC Impact. We'll also go over application specifications for each of the 8 RFPs that we'll go over today. And then towards the end, we'll go over the RFP timeline. And of course, we do have a question and answer process during the application process. So we'll be able to go over those details. And at the end, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. So just some housekeeping. In the chat, you see that there is a link. Please sign in if you haven't done so already. Again, we're going to answer as many questions as we can, so feel free to insert your questions in the chat, and we'll be able to unmute at some point towards the end and we can have a conversation. As we mentioned, the session is recorded, so you can refer to it in the future as you're writing your RFP if you have to go back to something. And also, if you haven't already gone to the First Steps Kent website, there is a section called Millage, and you want to click on that. And the materials and the items that we'll go over today are going to be posted on that website under funding opportunities, and the guide to help you navigate the EC Impact system is also there as well. Okay, so let's go over the Ready by 5 Early Childhood Millage. Next slide, please, Jill. Thank you. As many of you know, back in November of 2018, Kent County voters overwhelmingly approved the Early Childhood Millage. Kent County became the first county in Michigan with tax dollars specifically collected for the support of early childhood programming. Currently, the millage is funded at a 0.25 property tax increase. So that generates from 2019 to 2024, about $6.6 million a year, $39 million in total. Okay, so as the administrator of the Early Childhood Millage, First Steps Kent does have contractual and fiduciary obligations to the county and to the community. We are responsible for the development, the coordination, the implementation, and administration of the millage. Some of the activities that we are in charge of is what we're doing here today is gathering everyone and opening up an RFP allocation process for all of you to apply for funding. We're also charged with establishing the Resident Proposal Review Board. And the Resident Proposal Review Board, also known as the RPRB, is a community board that is responsible for reviewing applications submitted through this process and making recommendations for what proposals should be funded and how much. The RPRB is composed of 9 people, 2 appointed county commissioners, 1 county administrative staff person, a First Steps Kent Commission member, an early childhood expert, and 4 parents of children ages 0 through 5 from the community. We are also the visible point of contact for all Kent County residents and service providers for the millage. For a full list of our responsibilities, you can view that on the service provider manual, which is also available online on our website. Jill, could you hit the tab one more time? Thank you so much. So as FSK has requirements to fulfill, agencies have requirements that they also must fulfill for receiving Ready by 5 funds. The proposing agency agreement can be found in the EC Impact application process, but I'm just going to go over a few requirements. Jill, if you could hit a cup, just finish the slide. Thank you so much. And this proposing agency requirement is an attachment in the EC Impact application process. Your agency leadership must sign this agency requirement, this agency agreement in order to fulfill the RFP application process. So essentially, we are looking at an agency's integrity, their past performance, the record of past performance, the integrity, financial and technical resources. Agencies are expected to have the ability to perform successfully under the terms and conditions set forth in the RFP. We also have financial requirements outlined in the RFP, and you can also review these in the service provider manual. I can't stress enough to look over those requirements in the service provider manual if this is your first time applying for Ready by 5 funds. And First Steps Kent reserves the right to reject any proposal if there's any evidence submitted by or investigated about a proposing agency, and if they've failed to satisfy First Steps Kent. And now I'm going to hand it off to Heather, and she's going to go over a little more about Ready by 5 and what it looks like for providers.
Thanks, Christine. Good morning, everybody. Just want to start out, I think everybody's aware of this, but Ready by 5 funds services for children ages birth through 5 years of age and expecting parents living in Kent County. Kind of some other things to know as a organization that may receive funds. We'll go to the next slide. So Ready by 5 millage funds are taxpayer dollars. These are a little bit different. Oh, can you go back? They're a little bit different than private philanthropic dollars. So it's important as you are advertising and letting the community know that about services funded through these dollars, that they're not advertised as free or no cost. Funding, as you apply for this funding, it's designed to cover the cost of direct services and reasonable administrative costs. Funds must be used in the fiscal year that they are awarded. You're going to hear a few details around that. Kati's going to go over the fiscal year piece as we are in a transition year with fiscal year as the county is moving to a different calendar year for their fiscal year. Funding cannot be used to purchase equipment and property unless it is specified in the RFP. And all of the RFPs that we have here today, none of them specify that this can be purchased. So if you want to understand what equipment and property is, we encourage you to look at the service provider manual, and you can find that information on page 63. And also, as Christine mentioned in the previous slide, and we will just re-emphasize this. Please take a close look at the requirements in the proposing agency agreement that is submitted with each proposal. That's the online application attachment B. And also complete requirements can be found in the Ready by 5 service provider manual. The next slide. The other thing to know is with millage funds, they cannot supplant existing private foundation or other philanthropic funds, as well as funding that is available through state, local, or federal sources that's already in use and supporting services. So for example, if your organization is leveraging Medicaid funds to cover the cost of services, and you decide that you don't want to leverage Medicaid funds and you only want to use Ready by 5 funds, that would be supplanting funding. So we need to make sure that we're leveraging as many existing sources to support the cost of programs, and these dollars are kind of filling in the gaps and expanding on those current sources. The proposing agency also agrees to seek other sources of funding as you can. So that might be grants, state, local, federal funds, might be donations. We're going to talk about cost sharing that is applicable to some of the programs. And again, we're going to say it again. See the service provider manual for full details on funding requirements. So with that, we have reporting requirements, and there are reporting requirements in a couple different ways. We reimburse based on actual cost. So invoices for payment are submitted monthly by the 10th of the month, and there's an online process to do that. For direct service contracts, child or expectant parent data is submitted monthly. And if you are not familiar with this process, please take a close look at these requirements. They're very specific, and it is required that we can collect information for each individual served. It includes demographic information, service information, and if your program is doing referrals, what type of referrals you are completing with families. This data submission follows a very specific .csv file format with required fields and codes as defined in the Ready by 5 data standards document. You can find a link to this in the RFP. And again, please make sure that you're reviewing these requirements and understanding what these requirements are as you're applying for funding. Agencies will be required to sign a data agreement with First Steps Kent and Kent County Health Department as part of the contracting process. And you can find more information about this in Section 2, Part 3. You will find a grid in that section, and it will tell you if monthly data submissions are required for the service type that you're applying for. And additional program-specific outcomes and updates are submitted on a quarterly schedule. So please take a look at that Section 2, Part 3, and then the Section 1, Part 3B. That will also walk you through the different reporting requirements. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kati.
Thank you, Heather. So next is funding and contract terms. So for this round of funding, October 1st, 2023 through September 30th, 2024, we have projected 11.4 available funding. And this is still contingent of the actual annual Kent County tax capture and subject to appropriation by the Kent County Board of Commissioners. So regarding contract terms, since Kent County changed their fiscal year to an October-September fiscal year in 2023, the contracts that have continued services, the ones funded for the January-December 2023 period, will begin on January 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2024, and run for 9 months. And for new contracts and some few selected services, contracts will begin on October 1st, 2023, and run for 12 months through September 30, 2024. So for more details, you can see section 2, part 3 of each RFP. The next slide refers to the reimbursement structure, which most of you are familiar with. So services will be reimbursed on an actual cost rate basis up to the total amount of the funds awarded. All services will be paid on a reimbursement payment structure and awarded in one of two ways, for the actual cost or the fine rate. And again, see section 2, part 3 of the RFP for additional detail. Reimbursement will be only for the actual, reasonable, and allowable costs of programming, and terms will be specified in the service provider agreement. So next, we'll go Evan with the performance track.
Thank you, Kathy. Evan Heil, Data and Outcomes Coordinator. So as part of the Ready by 5 millage, we will be tracking your progress against your contract. So we do this by measuring 3 key program metrics. The first is number of individuals served. Jill, if you could give me one more slide click, it looks like there were some animations on this one. These are children aged 5 served by your program, or in some cases, expecting parents. And that's going to vary depending on your program delivery. But if your program serves expecting parents, you should include that in your estimation of individuals served during the proposal. Second, we have encounters. These are numbers of contacts or sessions to be provided to participants. Encounters are going to be determined during the contracting process. So not during this initial proposal process, but they will be used eventually to track contract performance. And then Jill, if you could give me one more slide forward. And finally, actual program costs. So the amount reimbursed or required by your program versus budgeted will also be considered when we're trying to understand performance. Service partners track and submit this information monthly, as Heather said. During contracting, the Ready by 5 team and your administrative team will determine data submission protocols specific to your program. For your proposal, estimate the number of unique individuals your program will serve that meet those Ready by 5 eligibility criteria. Go on to the next slide, if you don't mind, Jill. Milestone payments. So some Ready by 5 contracts may earn up to 2% of their contract budgeted total through milestone payments. Milestone payments are performance-based contract options, and they are available for programs submitting under RFP 2, Healthy Development Services, and RFP 3, Parent Education and Support Services, but only home visiting. This does not include child safety, and I don't believe it includes healthy new parents either. More information is available in section 1 of the RFP in 2023. That'll be under section 1, part 2, funding details, section C, milestone payments. And then additional information about milestones will be made available during the contract process. I'm going to turn it over now to, I believe, Kyle.
It's me.
okay.
Hello, everybody. Just want to run through a couple more slides. If you could hit a couple more. There we go. Thanks, Jill. One more. There we go. Okay, equity and inclusion. This is something that we consider as we are reviewing proposals and thinking about how collectively we are reaching and serving communities and individuals throughout Kent County. Ready by 5 Investments are committed to supporting an early childhood system that helps all children and families thrive. And we are asking that agencies consider group-based factors and perhaps targeted approaches that address the varying needs and circumstances of groups and communities and geographies funded by Ready by 5. We also just want to recognize that equity is not the same as equality. As proposals are reviewed and discussed by the Ready by 5 Resident Proposal Review Board, how we balance equity with countywide access is considered and discussed. So within the RFP for each direct service, if you see section 2, part 2, you will see some specifications of groups and geographies that would benefit from expanded or new programming. We have, really built with our partners, great reach in the community, but we are always looking at where we might be missing communities or could increase reach within specific geographies, groups, populations. And we have provided some suggestions for where we would like to see if you are going to expand your program or if you're going to propose a new program. So kind of maintaining what we have as far as, this really remarkable reach, but also making sure that we are balancing access to all parts of the community. If you want to read more about the equity inclusion piece, we have section 1, part 5 of the RFP that gives a little more information about this. Next slide. Great. The other thing that we are calling out a bit more this year is the parent voice piece. So thinking about how do we partner with parents to make sure that services are meeting the needs of all families and communities in Kent County. So we're seeking proposals from agencies who engage and empower families as partners to shape the direction of program delivery. So we're going to be asking about that in the application, like how are you as a program thinking about that and engaging voice within the program. So this is in addition to what we ask of all direct services, where you're required to collect and interpret feedback from parents through satisfaction. So there's collecting satisfaction, like through a survey type process, as well as, making sure that parent voice is guiding the development and ongoing quality and other components of program development. And finally, we have been talking about the service provider manual. So we had to dedicate a slide to it. This is the manual that will give you all of the details about services. It will walk you through programming requirements, financial requirements, reporting requirements, organizational requirements, as well as description of service and program categories. It is available on the First Steps Kent website, and I will post a link here in the chat, just in case you have not seen this. Please just make sure you are familiar with this manual and have taken a look at it if you have not seen it before. With that, next slide. We will get into the request for proposal overview. So I believe this link has been put in the chat, and this is where we will be posting all materials related to the RFP. Next slide. And this is what the RFP looks like. Here's the contents. It is the same. All of our services are in this one document. We've combined them all. In section 1, you will find an overview of Ready by 5 funding. So a lot of the details that we just reviewed in the previous slide, as well as some additional ones. So take some time to read through all of those sections. Section 2 is where we get into the specifics of each type of service. So agencies can apply for more than one service, but they need to apply in separate proposals if they are applying for more than one service or program type. We can't combine two different services into one proposal. Section 3 talks about the RFP process, which we will highlight here a little bit later, but please take a moment to check out all the links that we have included in there, the timeline, and the question and answer process. And we will also have additional materials for you to reference. You will have access to today's recording and today's slides. There is a EC Impact proposal guide that will be available. EC Impact, we'll get into that. It's the online platform that we use for applications. And then an EC Impact agency training manual, and then there's a question and answer document. So all of those things will be posted on that website that we are sharing out. One thing that we want to call out and make sure everybody's thinking about as you're putting together your proposal, review the following sections. So in section 2, part 2, there is the description, attributes, and results of services. And in all of that content, you will see specific requirements that every service must have. We anticipate and that we'll get different models and services will look a little bit different, but there are some consistent attributes that we need to make sure are included as you apply under those different program types. The other piece is the criteria breakdown. This is in section 4. This is how the Ready by 5 Resident Proposal Review Board will evaluate each proposal. So it would be a really good idea to be able to make sure that you are addressing each of these areas in your proposal. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Kyle.
Hello all. Let's get into the application process, which is again housed in our EC Impact website. This application process is going to be open to returning agencies and new agencies. We want to tell you that we've updated the agency training manual for EC Impact procedures and processes. That's also found on our Millage portal page. When you apply for any Ready by 5 programs, you will have to register for the programs you apply for. So you will select which RFP you're going to be responding to, and we will put you in the correct area for that application. So once you log in and select which program, there might be a little waiting period for us to put you in the correct form set. So just know that it immediately may not pop up. And so also all proposals, whether you're submitting 1 or 3, they need to be submitted at the same time. So please make sure that everything is ready to go before you hit submit. And if you apply for a program, but you don't want to include that one, let's say you've changed your mind, you can also exclude that from the packet for being submitted. So please know that when you're applying. We can go to the next slide, where we are going to get into EC Impact, the agency level form. So in EC Impact, you're going to be completing agency level information and also program level information. Agency level information is only done one time per agency. So whether you're applying for 1 or 3 programs, you'll just have to fill out these forms once for this application. We can go on to the next slide, which contains the agency information. So attachment A, you're going to be filling out your agency staff and leadership diversity. So you'll be filling out these columns for race and ethnicity for your organization. And this, like I said, is only done once per agency. So just a note, when you're filling these out, make sure the totals match in the bottom, just so that we have clarity on that. So just keep that in mind as you're filling out this form. We can go on to the next slide, which also contains our agency level attachments B and C. These are two agreements that you will have to sign. Actually, the leadership, either whether you have an executive director, president, or CEO, both that individual plus the board chairman will have to sign both of these certifications. And these are uploaded as a PDF, and we include that in the link. So you'll be able to see the link, click into it, fill it out, save it, and then submit it right back to us for these agency level forms. We can go to the next slide, and that will cover some additional required attachments. So every agency will need to attach your most recent audited financials, 3 letters of recommendation in one PDF file. And for these letters of recommendation, this is agency specific letters of recommendation, not necessarily program specific. You'll also upload your organization chart, and this is per program for Ready by 5 programs. So if you're applying for, let's say, 2 Ready by 5 programs, you will organize your organizational chart in 2 sections for those Ready by 5 staff members and everyone involved per Ready by 5 program, also bound in one PDF file. And also you have the opportunity to upload an agency annual report, but that is optional. We are going to go on to the next slide, which covers more programmatic level forms. These are in particular for direct services. So these next few slides are geared more toward RFPs 1 through 4. And if you have a direct service program, you're going to be serving individuals. You're going to have to put how many you're anticipating to serve. And so this is for your whole contract period. This RFP cycle, we have some RFPs starting January 1st, 2024, going to September 2024, and then also October of 2023 through the end of September 2024. So be aware of your contract period when you're figuring out this number, and you'll just enter how many individuals will be enrolled with your Ready by 5 program. Please begin at 0. So an example, if your agency, this program proposes to serve a total number of 50 children and expectant parents for your contract period, you'll just simply have to enter 50 in this form field. We can go on to the next slide, which we will cover some new items. So I think if you, this is an animation slide, so you click 1, 2 more, yeah, we're good. So new this year, we're going to be asking you to fill out a spreadsheet that goes over who you've been historically serving in terms of your individuals to be served. These you will want to take time and review. If you've submitted demographics to the Kent County Health Department last year, you're going to want to understand your data and who and where you are serving, like who and where your program has served and has successfully served. So you'll be telling us for this year who you're going to be serving, and if your program is anticipating to expand services, so maybe you've added a new staff member or you have new capacity, you're going to tell us who and where and how your program will specifically reach those new populations or areas for this new upcoming round of funding. And like I said, this is going to be in the demographic description form. It's an attached spreadsheet when you're filling out either RFPs 1 through 4. So you'll see that as a required document. And so if you're doing that, you'll just need to submit that and attach it in the appropriate spot. Next, we're going to talk a little bit more about individuals served. When you're coming up with the number, we would like you to be realistic. And we want you to be realistic because your contract success will be evaluated on whether or not you are able to reach and reach and successfully serve your number that you have chosen. So when you're coming up with your number, you should consider a few things. One, consider your model. Also, some areas to consider is what has happened historically in your program. Think about if you've been doing this for a couple of years, what has been your history? What if there are any residual effects to COVID, if that's still affecting your participation, and then also your partnerships. If you need to reach out to partners, if you receive referrals or help with your outreach, please consider these as a potential barrier or access to your numbers served. And also, if you are a new or expanding program, do you need any ramp up time to get things going? So in the first 3 months, maybe it's slow, then you'll really take off. So please consider all of those variables when you're entering your numbers to be served. And just as a note, do not count parents and children from the same family in your count. Counts will either serve a child or an expectant parent, not both. And if you are an indirect service, you'll just be able to enter 0 in that form field to submit your proposal. We can go now to the evaluation result indicator. So in 2021, a third-party evaluation of Ready by 5 began, and there are specific indicators linked to each programs for this evaluation, and you're going to select at least one indicator per your program, and you will address one of the indicators, and you will be allowed to just choose one per program. So we can go to the next slide. And after your indicators, you're going to choose your SMART goal. These are program specific, and they will likely be different than your result indicators. So, excuse me, you'll need to provide a minimum of one goal per program or per application. You are able to do more than one if you wish, and you will be reporting on these goals in your quarterly report. And as you can see here, the format is an ad lib type. So when you're thinking about your goal, you'll have to, translate it into this kind of ad lib model. And we can go to the next slide, which can show you some more examples of a SMART goal. So SMART goals meaning specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. I'm going to just pick that first one. So the program will increase the number of families reporting positive parenting practices through families completing 12 home visits annually, and that will be tracked by families completing the Piccolo tool. So as you can see in that example, it contains all the elements of the SMART goal, which is the same that we want for proposing agencies to include in their SMART goal. So just take some time to go through that when you're thinking about creating your goal. We can go to the next slide, which is partnering organizations. So this form is for who will formally be included as a partner with your Ready by 5 program. And a formal partnership is defined by a written agreement or an MOU, so a memorandum of understanding in place. So, excuse me, when you're filling out this form and you've identified some partnering organizations, you're going to tell us whether this is a new or existing partnership. You're also going to include a description of the partnership, and you're also going to be telling us what is exchanged. So if you're having an exchange of funds, this will be more of a subcontractor type of relationship. And then you're also going to include this partner in your budget. So if you're exchanging funds, make sure to tell us about this partnership, both in this form, and we also want to see that in your budget if you are paying them. The second type of formal partnership we ask for you to include in your proposal is a partnership where you exchange data. So this is if you are sharing client data, client informed consent is also collected by them. So you'll need to make sure that the consent is in place and the data is expected to be submitted to the Ready by 5 standardized format. So I'm going to hand it over to Kati, where she is going to talk a little bit about staff positions and budgetary items.
Thank you, Kyle. So for the staff position, you need to include the following information: position title, FTE of each position, and percentage FTE funded by Ready by 5, enter in decimal format. If it is a current or new position, how many people are included, and a brief description of position, and the total wages and benefits for each position title. And this will be itemized in the budget. So remember that all models must employ professionals with expertise who can provide culturally appropriate services and who have completed a background check. So this next slide is for direct staff costs. As you are determining your FTEs who will provide direct services, here are some things to consider. Required direct service time, professional development hours and training costs, paid holiday time and paid time off, seasonal work schedules, if applicable, no shows, cancellations, time to attend meetings, time to complete annual assessment, required paid lunch breaks or other breaks, paid drive time, if applicable, dedicated office space or workspace, documentation, data entry time, schedule mandatory staff retreats, etc. And this is not a complete list, and not all things will be applicable to every program, but this is a list of things we have heard from agencies throughout the year. So there may be other considerations as well. The next slide is an example of what would be included in indirect staff costs and a list of things to consider as you develop your budget. And like data support time for monthly data submission, scheduling and planning of direct staff time, marketing communications related to programming, including recruitment, financial staff time to track expenses and submit monthly invoice, administrative assistance supports, development of agreements, service provider agreements and partner agreements, leadership staff time to support annual assessment, IT, HR, and all other backroom support staff time, president, executive director, CEO, and executive leadership time may be specifically included only if their time is directly dedicated to specific program activities. So next slide is the budget. So for expenses, you need to provide only expenses that are requested Ready by 5 funding. FTEs and partnerships exchanging fund must be defined in the proposal, and costs for each position or title must be itemized. And make sure that you understand requirements related to cost sharing, donations, and allowable costs, including equipment. So for additional information, you can see the Ready by 5 service provider agreement for complete requirements. So here are the things to check before you submit the budget. In the budget form, only provide expenses for Ready by 5 funding requests, and any partnerships where funds will be exchanged should be itemized and included in the budget expense section as well. So this will help the review board and First Steps can be very clear on what the request is, what positions are being funded, and what partners are receiving funds. So all the steps to submit can be found in the East Impact training manual, which is available online. So now we can go back to Kyle.
All right, thank you, Kati. I'm going to talk a little bit about the first 5 RFP opportunities. We have 8 opportunities this funding round. Agencies are able to apply for more than one opportunity. However, only one program type may be selected for each proposal submitted. So the image on your right explains the 8 RFPs and then the program types within each service type. And I also want to note that there is a possibility that additional services could be included in this RFP, and we will let you know about any updates on the website or e-news. And so any final revisions to the RFP or additions will be made as soon as possible, but looking at making none no later than May 12th. So please keep your eye out for any updates or additions for this round, please. So we can go into RFP number 1, which is our outreach and navigation services, titled Coordinated Outreach Screening and Navigation. So this is our multi-agency coordinated effort to reach and engage families. These agencies applying will serve as the right door for families to find available resources, information, and programs. The aim is to increase the usage of early childhood resources, and programs work to identify the needs of family through formal screening efforts and conversations with clients, with the navigators. And navigation will ultimately offer connections, addressing barriers to access and utilization of services, information, and resources. So the goal of this RFP is to increase that cross-agency collaboration between providers so they can reach as many families as possible. And in this RFP, proposing programs, they have to define the 4 components in their model, being 1, coordination, 2, outreach, 3, screening, and 4, navigation. And if the model does not meet these 4 requirements, we do not recommend you apply under this RFP. So we're really looking for those 4 components within the model. And that is RFP number 1 in a brief summary. Moving on to RFP 2. These are our healthy development services. These services provide programming to expectant parents and children through the age 5 to demonstrate success with supporting positive health behaviors and driving better health and developmental outcomes for children through age 5. So this is the service type, healthy development services. We have 4 program types, which are the healthy, expectant, and new parent programming, developmental and social emotional screenings and referral, healthy and safe home environment programming, and 4th are niche parenting support program types. Now, when you're looking at applying for this RFP, please note in section 2, it's going to go into detail for each of these 4. So it's going to give you all the information and definitions you may need to understand maybe which program type you should be applying under. So please read those definitions and information in section 2. And just know that home visiting programs, those proposals applying under this category will not be considered, because if you go to the next slide, we're going to talk about RFP number 3, which is our parent education and support services. These programs ensure parents have the knowledge and skills to support their children's health, development, and learning. These services could provide in-home or community-based support and education, and funding will be available to programs that offer parent education through home visits and ancillary support that addresses preventable causes of child accidents and mortality. So this service type has 2 program types, home visiting programs and also our child safety initiative. So again, please read and review section 2 of this RFP to get the full information on what is a home visiting program and also what is a child safety initiative program. So again, make sure you're reading that to understand fully what is needed and expected of a proposing agency or program. We can go on to the next slide, which is RFP 4. These are our early learning services. These programs support early learning and development and respond to the diverse family and diverse family needs of children in Kent County. These programs should incorporate elements of the early childhood standards of quality. These come directly from the Michigan State Board of Education. And these programs, in addition to that, offer nationally recognized evidence-informed services to children through age 5. So in this service type, we also have 2 types of programs. We have the Play and Learn community programming and also early literacy and learning. And again, to fully understand what the components are, within those 2 program types, please look to the RFP section 2 so you have as much information as possible before applying. We can go to the next slide, and this covers RFPs 1 through 4. They have the same EC Impacts form, so whether you're applying for an outreach and navigation program or a healthy development, you're going to be completing the same type of forms, and the forms that you are going to complete are listed below. So you're going to include a proposed service narrative with all the details. You're going to select your result indicators and include a program-specific goal or goals. You're also going to include a numbers served. And for those direct service programs, you're going to fill out that demographic description, and that's going to tell us where you have historically and successfully reached clients or participants of the program. You're also going to inform us about any partnering organizations, in addition to providing a budget narrative, budget, and proposal certifications, just telling us that you understand all the requirements needed to apply for this type of funding. And whenever you see this green question mark, please hover over that with your mouse, and that is a little trick to provide some more information and instructions where appropriate and available. We can go to the next slide, which is going to cover RFP 5. This is the Parent Education and Support Language Services. So these are our translation and interpretation providers. We do this because all Ready by 5 programs are eligible to request interpretation and translation services for their Ready by 5 programs, and the costs will be covered through this source of funding. We are seeking agencies who are experienced with a variety of translation interpretation services in the areas of face-to-face, over the phone or video, document translation, and 1 hour in services requesting some cultural considerations as they serve families through translation services. So this is an opportunity for Ready by 5 programs to get a little cultural training from the translation providers if they wish to do that. And then for RFP 5, the EC Impacts forms that you're going to have to complete is the translation and interpretation narrative. You're also going to be filling out those proposal certifications, a budget, which will just be 1 line at the very bottom, because this is considered a defined rate contract. So we are reimbursing this service by each service delivered, and the amount is specified through a fee schedule, which you will attach in this if you are applying for this RFP. And you'll also provide a language certification and license list, in addition to talking and uploading your project staff. All right, we can go to the next slide, where Christine is going to talk about RFP number 6.
Well, this is exciting. I get to introduce a new RFP for this year, RFP 6, the Outreach and Navigation Technology Solution Early Education Technology Link. So essentially, 1 agency will be selected to lead the implementation and the oversight of a technology-based solution and supports that will foster better connections between families and childcare providers. The Early Education Link programming will be developed to enhance the infrastructure that will provide up-to-date information about current child care openings in Kent County. Program staff will be funded through this RFP. They must provide outreach, support, and technical assistance to stakeholders that are accessing the system, including families who are looking for care, providers with available openings, and community partners providing navigation services to families. With this proposal, efforts at the local level must align with the child care resource and referral efforts and long-term planning happening at the state level. As the technology is developed, regular communication is required with the Early Childhood Investment Corporation and Michigan's Office of Great Start. Programming will also need to align with the Ready by 5 outreach and navigation network. In EC Impact, there are 5 areas that need to be completed for this application. There's the narrative, the section about partnering organizations, budget narrative, budget, of course, and the proposal certifications that we went over earlier this morning. Next, we have RFP 7, returning as the Healthy Development Fetal Infant Mortality Review Lead. One organization will receive funding to implement and provide the ongoing management of the FEMR network for Kent County. As many of you know, FEMR networks are in place at the state level and in multiple communities and counties across the state. We are seeking to continue this network in Kent County. This RFP seeks proposals that ensures services are addressing the social, equity, economic, and health factors that contribute to healthy births in Kent County. Through a rigorous review process, the FEMR network must lead the identification of factors that contribute to infant deaths, and develop action-oriented recommendations to eliminate these infant deaths. The knowledge that is gained will inform our early childhood network on what key programs and initiatives can help support the healthy development of all babies and infants. There are additional specifications, and I just want to highlight 2. There's quarterly reporting that needs to go out to the early childhood network and an annual summary. In EC Impact, there are 4 areas that need to be completed: the narrative, of course, the budget, narrative and budget, and the proposal certifications. Last but not least, finally, we are at RFP number 8. Returning again this year is the Healthy Development Training Lead. Trainings are for all direct service professionals funded by Ready by 5 and their direct supervisors. This year, we have 4 training topics that need to be addressed: responding to family needs with a trauma-informed approach, understanding implicit bias, domestic violence and family safety, and quality program practices to improve services to families with young children. Again, we anticipate this year that 3 proposals will be selected for this area, and agencies must demonstrate that they have the expertise and the experience to provide the training, and providers are welcome to apply for more than 1 training. And in EC Impact, you have 5 areas. Of course, the area of the narrative, the budget, the certifications, the proposing partnering agencies, and the fee schedule. And I do want to note, as it is different from other RFPs, there is a defined rate for the contracts that are awarded funding. So the fee schedule will be important because that is what would determine the amount that's reimbursed. And Megan is up next.
Hello, everyone. This is our last section of the RFP, section 3, and also the last section of the pre-conference. So I'm just talking about the logistics a little bit over the next few months. And if you have any questions related to the RFP, it must be made in writing by Monday, May 8, 2023. I just put the link in the chat. You have to use this online form. And then First Steps will answer all the questions in writing as well and post them to the website. So keep an eye on that. And we will have the final Q&A posted by May 12th, 2023. Also, just note that it's your responsibility to continue to look at the website for any updated questions and answers. And the next one is EC Impact. So we are able to answer any questions, technical questions related to EC Impact. So if you have any questions related to the EC Impact system, you can reach out with that email address right there, readyby5kent@firststepskent.org, and we can get back to you about that. And as far as the timeline goes, we are at the top of the timeline. So the RFP is issued today. It's been posted on the website, and we'll open up the application on EC Impact this morning as well. There's another pre-conference tomorrow. If you need somebody else to go, you can sign up for that still, but it'll be exactly the same information as today. Your RFPs are due, your proposals are due June 1 by 3 p.m. And then we already set aside the date for the review board to meet, which will be at the end of June. And First Steps Kent Commission will go in and approve the recommendations on July 27. And then the final approval we need is the Board of Commissioners, the Kent County Board of Commissioners, and that will be August 7. And a lot of times we'd like to invite anyone who applied for funding to come to the Board of Commissioners meeting for support. And the last one is, while we are meeting with the review board from June 22 to June 30, you need to be aware that we'll be asking questions. The review board often has a lot of questions about the proposals. So during that time, we'll be reaching out to the primary contact in EC Impact to ask the questions, and then you'll have a day or two to respond to the questions. So just double check that the email and phone contact are correct in your proposal, and EC Impact as well. Then the last one, do you have any questions? Please put your questions in the chat if you could, because we need to put them on the website. So if you have any questions now, we're happy to answer them, but otherwise you can submit them via the form. And I already have one question, which is, will the slides be added to the site? And yes, they will be. And one of the recordings will be up there as well. Well, I think we can wait a few more minutes for for some questions, but otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, just we'll look forward to the proposals.